the discovery that changed everything. Marcus Chun pressed his palm against the warm metal surface, buried beneath decades of fallen leaves. The strange pod hummed with energy that made his teeth ache. At 15, he thought he knew everything about the abandoned research facility behind his grandmother's farm. But this wasn't human technology. The pod's surface rippled like liquid mercury under his touch. Suddenly, images flooded his mind. He saw himself older, wearing clothes he didn't recognize, standing on a ship's bridge, surrounded by beings that weren't human. The vision was so vivid, he could smell the recycled air and hear the gentle hum of artificial gravity generators. "Marcus!" His grandmother's voice echoed across the forest. "Dinner!" He jerked his hand away, gasping. The images faded, but the memory remained crystal clear. In that brief moment, he had lived an entire life. He had been Captain Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Fleet, leading humanity's first contact with the Zephyrian Alliance. He had negotiated treaties, commanded massive starships, and helped forge an empire that spanned 12 solar systems. But none of that had happened yet. The pod's glow dimmed as if sensing his withdrawal. Marcus circled it carefully, noting the alien symbols etched into its hull. They meant something to him now, though he couldn't explain how. The markings told a story of desperate times, of a species called the hegemony that consumed worlds like a plague. His phone buzzed. A text from his friend Jake about weekend plans. Marcus stared at the mundane message, then at the impossible artifact before him. How could he care about basketball games when he had just experienced humanity's future? The memories weren't his, yet they felt more real than his own childhood. He remembered the weight of command, the responsibility of protecting billions of lives. He remembered the first hegemony attack on Mars colony, the way their ships appeared like dark holes in space, swallowing light itself. Most importantly, he remembered how it all began. Not with politicians or generals, but with a boy who found a pod in the woods. A boy who touched something he shouldn't have and gained knowledge that would save his species. Marcus looked at his hands. They were still 15-year-old hands, soft and unmarked by the battles he remembered fighting. But the knowledge was there, burning in his mind like a star. He knew where the hegemony would strike first. He knew which technologies humanity would need to survive. He knew the exact words that would convince the Zephyrians to become humanity's allies instead of conquerors. The pod pulsed once, as if acknowledging his understanding. Then it began to sink back into the earth, its purpose fulfilled. Marcus lunged forward, but his hands passed through empty air. The artifact was gone, leaving only disturbed soil and the lingering scent of ozone. "Marcus, your food's getting cold." He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his jeans. His reflection in a nearby puddle showed the same face, but his eyes held depths that hadn't been there an hour ago. He had work to do. Humanity's future depended on what happened next, and he was the only one who knew what was coming. The boy who had entered these woods no longer existed. In his place stood someone who had touched infinity and returned to plant the seeds of humanity's greatest triumph. The weight of tomorrow's knowledge. Marcus couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the hegemony's first scout ship, descending through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. The attack would happen in 18 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. He knew because he had lived through it already. His laptop screen glowed in the darkness as he typed furiously. Research papers, scientific journals, government databases. He absorbed information like a sponge, cross-referencing everything with the memories that weren't his own. The quantum resonance drive, plasma shielding technology, the exact mineral composition needed for hull plating that could withstand hegemony. Weapons. "You're up late." His grandmother, Nora, stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of tea. Couldn't sleep? Marcus accepted the warm mug gratefully. His grandmother had worked for NASA. Before retirement, and her sharp mind still cut through. Problems like a laser. If anyone might believe him, it would be her. Grandma, what would you do if you knew something terrible was going to happen, but no one would believe you? She settled into the chair beside his desk, studying his face. Depends on how certain I was. And how terrible. Her eyes drifted to his laptop screen, taking in the advanced physics equations he'd been working on. These calculations. Where did you learn this? Marcus made a decision that would change everything. I need to show you something. Tomorrow. In the woods. The next morning, he led her to the spot where the pod had been. Nothing remained except a perfect circle of earth that seemed somehow more alive than the forest around it. Plants grew greener here, and the air hummed with barely perceptible energy. It was here, Marcus said, kneeling and pressing his palm to the ground. An alien pod. When I touched it, I saw ... everything. Our entire future. His grandmother knelt. Beside him, her weathered hands exploring the strange soil. Tell me what you saw. So he did. He told her about the hegemony, beings of pure energy that consumed matter to fuel their expansion across the galaxy. He described their first attack on Luna Station, the way they stripped the moon's surface clean in minutes. He explained how humanity's response was chaotic and desperate until a young captain named Marcus Chun unified Earth's forces and reached out to the Zephyrians. The Zephyrians are traders, explorers. They've been watching us for decades, waiting to see if we're worthy of contact. When the hegemony attacks, they'll offer us a choice. Join their alliance or face extinction alone. Nora listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Show me the calculations again, she said finally. They spent the afternoon going through Marcus's research. His grandmother's questions were sharp and technical, probing for inconsistencies. But every equation checked out. Every prediction aligned with cutting-edge theoretical physics. The quantum resonance drive, she murmured, studying his sketches. This could revolutionize space travel. But the power requirements. The Zephyrians will help us solve that. But only if we prove we can defend ourselves first. We need to build prototype ships, establish orbital defenses. We have 18 months. His grandmother stood and paced to the window. Outside, the ordinary world continued its routine, unaware. At its future hung in the balance. Marcus, what you're describing? It would require coordinating governments, scientists, military leaders across the entire planet. No one's going to listen to a 15-year-old boy with a story about touching an alien pod. Then we don't tell them about the pod. We start small. We build something that proves the technology works. She turned back to him, and he saw the moment she made her choice. The skepticism in her eyes transformed into determination. I still have contacts at NASA, and there's a private research facility in Colorado that might be interested in revolutionary propulsion systems. She smiled. They don't need to know where the inspiration came from. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since touching the pod, he wasn't alone with the knowledge of what was coming. There's something else, he said quietly. In the memories I saw, the boy who found the pod... He didn't survive the first battle. He died protecting the research station where humanity's first starship was being built. His grandmother's face went pale. Marcus... I'm not him anymore. The moment I touched that pod, I became someone else. Someone who knows what needs to be done. He met her eyes steadily. I'm going to save our world, Grandma, but I'm going to need help. Building humanity's Shield the Workshop in Colorado. Springs hummed with activity that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Vincent Torres watched in amazement as 15-year-old Marcus Chun directed engineers 3 times his age in assembling. Prototype engine that defied everything they knew about physics. The resonance frequency needs to be exactly 7.34 terahertz. Marcus explained, his hands steady as he adjusted delicate components. Any deviation, and the quantum field collapses. 6 months had passed since his grandmother made the introductions. Marcus had arrived with blueprints that made seasoned scientists weep with their elegance and impossibility. A boy claimed the designs came from theoretical work he'd been developing, but Torres suspected there was more to the story. Field. Generators are online, called Rachel Kim from the control booth. She was young for a quantum physicist, brilliant enough to understand Marcus's equations, even when she couldn't explain where they came from. Marcus nodded and stepped back from the prototype. It was no larger than a car engine, but according to his calculations, it could accelerate a spacecraft to near light speed without violating relativity. The implications were staggering. Beginning test sequence. Torres announced the engine hummed to life, its crystalline core glowing with captured energy. Instruments around the room began registering readings that shouldn't have been possible. Space itself seemed to ripple around the device. "It's working," Rachel breathed. "The space-time distortion is exactly what the equations predicted." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. This was just the beginning. Hidden in secure facilities. Around the world, other teams were working on different pieces of the puzzle. Plasma shielding in Japan, advanced materials in Germany, weapon systems in Brazil that could theoretically harm beings of pure energy. His phone buzzed. A message from his grandmother, package delivered to Nevada. Our friend was very interested. The friend was General Patricia Hayes, the most forward-thinking military leader Marcus could identify. She now had blueprints for orbital defense platforms that could detect hegemony scouts before they reached Earth's atmosphere. "Dr. Torres," Marcus said quietly, "I need to ask you something important. How quickly could we scale this up? Build an actual starship?" Torres wiped sweat from his forehead. "With unlimited funding and resources? Maybe 5 years for a small craft. 10 for something capable of carrying a crew. We have 12 months. The older man stared at him. "That's impossible. Even if we had every nation on Earth cooperating. Then we'd better start making that happen." Marcus pulled out his laptop and opened a secured communication channel. Faces appeared on the screen. The other scientists his grandmother had contacted, government officials who had been quietly briefed, military leaders who understood that something unprecedented was coming. "The prototype is successful," he announced. "Phase 2 begins now." Over the following weeks, Marcus became a ghost haunting the corridors of power. He met with presidents and prime ministers, always accompanied by adults who could vouch for his credentials. He showed them footage of the prototype tests, shared intelligence about threats that hadn't materialized yet, and painted a picture of humanity's future that was both terrifying and magnificent. The response was predictably chaotic. Some nations wanted to weaponize the technology immediately. Others demanded proof of the alien threat. A few tried to steal the research for themselves, but slowly, impossibly, a coalition began to form. The United Terran Defense Initiative, they called it. 12 nations pooling resources and expertise to prepare for a war nobody else believed was coming. Construction began simultaneously on 6 continents. Orbital shipyards assembled in secret. Mining operations on the moon expanded beyond all previous scales. Children in schools around the world suddenly found their science curricula updated, with advanced physics concepts that would help them understand the universe they were about to inherit. Marcus stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly below him. In the memory visions, this facility had been destroyed in the first hegemony attack. Now it bristled with defensive weapons and served as headquarters for humanity's growing fleet. Impressive work for a teenager. He turned to find General Hayes approaching. The woman who would become humanity's first admiral was studying him with sharp, calculating eyes. The first ships will be ready in 8 months, she reported. But Marcus, I have to ask, how do you know all this, really? Marcus had been expecting this question for a long time. He looked out at the stars, seeing threats and allies that others couldn't yet perceive. Would you believe me if I told you the truth? Try me. So he did. He told her about the pod, the visions, the memories of a future that hadn't happened yet. When he finished, General Hayes was quiet for a long time. Either you're completely insane, she said finally, or humanity just got very lucky. Lucky how? She smiled grimly. Because the boy who found that pod cared enough about the future to change it. Outside the station's windows, the first Terran starship began its maiden voyage, carrying with it the hopes of an entire species. First contact protocol, the Zephyrian ship, appeared exactly where Marcus had predicted it would. 300 kilometers above Earth's North Pole, its crystalline hull reflecting aurora light like a captured rainbow. Humanity's response was swift and coordinated in a way that would have been impossible without months of preparation. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiant, humanity's flagship, watching the alien vessel with a mixture of awe and calculated wariness. Around her, the crew operated with quiet efficiency that came from extensive training and the absolute certainty that their young strategic advisor knew what he was talking about. They're not powering weapons, reported Commander Lisa Park from the tactical station. But their shields are active. Marcus floated beside the command chair, still getting used to zero gravity despite months of training. At 16, he was the youngest person ever to serve as a strategic consultant to the Terran Defense Fleet. His official title was Xenological Analyst, though everyone knew he was much more than that. They're waiting for us to make the first move, Marcus said. The Zephyrians value courage above all else. If we approach peacefully but with strength, they'll respect us. If we show fear or aggression, they leave us to face the hegemony alone. Admiral Hayes finished. I remember the briefing. The communication array crackled to life. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's in English. Marcus nodded. This was exactly how it had happened in his visions. They've been monitoring our broadcasts. For decades, they know our languages better than we do. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was melodious, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Terran vessel Defiant. I am Trade Singer Chiron of the merchant ship Harmonies. Edge. We have traveled far to meet the young species that build starships in the shadow of extinction. Admiral Hayes activated the response channel. Trade Singer Chiron. I am Admiral Patricia Hayes of the United Terran Defense Initiative. We welcome contact with your people. Your welcome is noted, Admiral Hayes. We have watched your preparations with interest. Few species attempt to arm themselves against the hegemony before the first attack. Most wait until it is too late. Marcus leaned forward. This was the critical moment. Admiral, ask about trade agreements. The Zephyrians are merchants. First, warriors second. They need to see value in helping us. Hayes nodded slightly. Trade Singer Chiron, we understand your people are explorers and traders. Perhaps we could discuss mutual benefits to our peoples. There was a long pause. Then, young species that builds in darkness. You speak of trade before you speak of war. This shows wisdom. We will dock with your vessel. Prepare a meeting chamber. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself face to face with his first alien being. Trade Singer Chiron was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had an opalescent quality that shifted between blue and silver, and her eyes were large and multifaceted like a dragonfly's. She moved with fluid grace, despite being nearly 2 meters tall. You are younger than expected, Chiron said, studying Marcus with obvious curiosity. Yet you carry the weight of knowledge beyond your years. I've had unique experiences, Marcus replied carefully. Indeed. We detected the quantum resonance 3 of your years ago. A temporal echo, very rare. Someone touched something they should not have. Admiral Hayes tensed, but Marcus remained calm. What does that mean to you? It means your species is either very fortunate or very foolish, perhaps both. Chiron settled into a chair that adjusted automatically to her frame. Tell me, young knowledge-bearer, what do you know of the hegemony? Marcus had been preparing for this question his entire life. They're not originally from this galaxy. They're refugees from somewhere else, something that consumed their original home. Now they consume everything in their path, converting matter to energy to fuel their expansion. They've destroyed 17 civilizations in this sector alone. Chiron's expression grew somber. 18. The Valdare fell last month. Their homeworld is now empty space. The weight of that statement settled over the room. An entire civilization, gone. They will reach your system in 4 months, Chiron continued. Their scout ships are already en route. We know, Admiral Hayes said. We've been preparing. With primitive weapons and theoretical shields? Child species, you cannot fight the hegemony with courage alone. Marcus leaned forward. What if we could offer you something valuable? Something worth the risk of helping us? Chiron's multifaceted eyes focused on him intently. Speak. Quantum resonance technology. We've solved problems that have puzzled your people for centuries. We can show you how to build engines that approach light speed without temporal paradox. We can offer you access to materials that exist in quantum superposition. The alien's expression shifted. In his visions, Marcus had learned to read Zephyrian emotions through subtle changes in skin coloration. Right now, Chiron was deeply intrigued. Impossible. Such technology requires understanding of multidimensional physics that takes millennia to develop. Marcus smiled. Would you like to see a demonstration? An hour later, Chiron stood in the Defiance engineering section, watching a device no larger than her hand generate a stable quantum field that folded space around itself. The implications were staggering. This changes everything, she whispered. With this technology, we could explore regions of space that have been unreachable for eons. It's yours, Marcus said. All of it. The only thing we ask in return is help preparing for what's coming. Chiron turned to Admiral Hayes. Your young strategist offers miracles as if they were common trade goods. Why? Hayes looked at Marcus, then back at the alien. Because he understands something the rest of us are still learning. In the universe, you either stand together or fall alone. Chiron was quiet for a long moment. Her skin shifting through colors Marcus had learned meant deep contemplation. Very well, she said finally. The Zephyrian Alliance will provide you with shield generators, weapon schematics, and tactical support. In return, you will share this quantum technology and... She looked directly at Marcus. You will tell me how a human child gained knowledge that spans centuries. Marcus met her, gazed steadily. That's a story for another time. Right now, we have 4 months to prepare for war. The battle for Earth's future, the hegemony arrived like a wound in space itself. Marcus watched from the command bridge of Luna, station as reality tore open and ships emerged that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each vessel was a perfect black sphere, smooth as marble and vast as mountains. 37 ships, reported Captain James Wright, humanity's most experienced pilot. They're maintaining formation at the edge of the system. Admiral Hayes stood beside Marcus, both of them staring at screens that showed humanity's nightmare. May manifest, just like you said they would. The past 4 months had transformed Earth's orbital space into a fortress. Zephyrian shield generators protected every major installation. Human-designed weapons platforms, upgraded with alien technology, formed defensive grids around Earth and Mars. Most importantly, The combined fleet of 43 human ships and 16 Zephyrian vessels had trained together until they moved like a single organism. "They're scanning us," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station. "Energy signatures are off the charts." Marcus closed his eyes, letting the memories guide him. "They're looking for signs of advanced civilization. Population centers, industrial capacity, military strength. In about 30 seconds, they'll send a single ship forward to test our defenses." He was right. One of the black spheres detached from the formation and began accelerating toward Earth. It moved with impossible smoothness, trailing distortions in space-time that made the stars behind it shimmer. "All stations, this is Admiral Hayes. Execute." Protocol 7. The response was immediate and devastating. Plasma cannon from 3 different orbital platforms locked onto the approaching hegemony ship and fired simultaneously. The beams struck barriers of pure energy that flared around the sphere like captured lightning. "No effect," Wright reported. "Their shields absorbed everything." But Marcus was smiling. "That wasn't supposed to destroy it. Look at their formation." On the tactical display, the remaining hegemony ships had begun moving. Their perfect sphere formation dissolved as they spread out, clearly reassessing the threat level. They expected no resistance, Admiral Hayes realized. "They're regrouping, which gives our allies time to arrive." As if summoned by his words, space erupted with new arrivals. Zephyrian reinforcements emerged from quantum tunnels, their crystalline ships blazing with energy. Behind them came vessels Marcus had never seen before, angular craft with hulls like polished obsidian. "The Korathi," Marcus breathed. "They actually came." Trade singer Kyrin's voice crackled over the communication channel from her flagship. "Young strategist, your people have impressed the Alliance Council. The Korathi bring their gravity weapons. Today, the hegemony faces united opposition." The battle that followed rewrote the rules of warfare. Human ingenuity combined with alien technology created tactics the hegemony had never encountered. Earth's ships, smaller and more agile than their enemies, darted between the black spheres like fish around whales, targeting weak points that Marcus had memorized from his visions. The Zephyrians deployed their trademark crystalline matrices, creating geometric patterns in space that amplified weapon effectiveness. The Korathi brought gravity itself as a weapon, crushing hegemony ships in folds of twisted spacetime. But the real surprise was humanity's secret weapon. "Admiral, the prototype is ready," reported Dr. Torres from his position aboard the research. Vessel Discovery. 6 months of desperate work had produced something that existed only in Marcus's impossible memories. A quantum virus capable of disrupting the energy beings that piloted hegemony ships. "Deploy it," Hayes ordered. Marcus watched as tiny probes launched from human ships, each one carrying a fragment of code that shouldn't have been possible to write. When they struck the hegemony vessels, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The perfect black spheres began to lose cohesion, their hulls rippling like disturbed water. "They're retreating," Captain Wright announced, disbelief clear in his voice. Indeed, the surviving hegemony ships were pulling back toward the edge of the system. For the first time in recorded history, they had encountered a species that could hurt them. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. They'll be back in greater numbers. This was just their scouting force. Admiral Hayes nodded grimly. "How long do we have?" 2 years. Maybe 3. They'll return with everything they have. Trade singer. Kyrin appeared on the main screen, her opalescent skin glowing with what Marcus had learned was Zephyrian joy. "Young species that fights like stars. Today you have earned a place in the Alliance. The galaxy has not seen such courage in generations." Marcus felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The boy who had touched an alien pod 3 years ago was gone, replaced by someone who had helped forge humanity's future among the stars. But there was still so much work to do. "This is just the beginning," he said, looking out at the stars where allies and enemies waited. "Today we proved we could fight. Tomorrow we prove we can win." Admiral Hayes placed a hand on his shoulder. "Lead the way, Marcus. You've brought us this far." As celebration erupted around them, Marcus stared into space and began planning humanity's next impossible victory. The Terran Empire would be born from these ashes, and it would shine across the galaxy like a beacon of hope for species yet to be discovered. The boy who had seen the future had successfully changed it. Now it was time to build something even better.